Hi, welcome to Senior Network. Excuse me. I'll be your host today. I am Mitchell Scholler, Executive Director of City Harvest Head Start Outreach Ministry. And today as my guest, I have with me Miss Cynthia Young, which also, she's been a case manager for at least 10 years.
Yes.
She's a successful real estate broker, and she works in the North Lawndale community. She volunteers a lot of her time with us, helping us with our family and our challenges. As well as Ms. Young, I also have with us today Bishop Steve Braxton of the Light of Archdiocese.
Light of Illinois.
Illinois Diocese
Right.
in Chicago. Bishop, again, I apologize, but welcome again for coming back for the second time.
Yeah.
And we're here today to talk about an issue that's very important to us as a nonprofit. For those of you that don't know, there are three elements to the nonprofit that we look at when we talk about servicing the community. One is sharing values between partners, organizations, and institutions. Second to that, we have missions and visions, and that corners from institution and organization. But here today, we're talking about the third component of a nonprofit, and that is valuing people. Since working in the community, we run across individuals and family. And from time to time, the programs that we offer in the community are not enough in terms of resources and help that they need. So on days like today, we reach out to you, the audience, hoping that you will be the resource, a reference, or connection to a family that we're going to talk about today who have many challenges. The first and foremost challenge for this family is housing. As you know, in the city of Chicago, bed bugs is a very terrible problem. So we have a family of 9, 7 children, a mother and a father, who is combating this housing issue. Second to that, they live, which is not uncommon, in a community in the inner city where they face violence. Violence is not a stranger to our community, not in the least. And for many of us, we struggle through it, and that's their second challenge. Last and most importantly is, here's a father who loves his family, who loves his children. But his greatest and most difficult challenge is trying to find legal custody support. Of course, there are programs in the city of Chicago that cater to the need of such families. But many times we find that a lot of people that's out there are looking to make money off of those who have problems that they don't have the knowledge to solve. So before I have my guests talk a little bit about what they do, I just want to give you a brief idea of why we chose this family to support on today's program. Here's a father and a mother, as I said, and they're pretty much like the Brady Bunch. 7 children, mother and a father. They live in a community where they teach their children the values of mentoring and training how to be personally safe in a community where bodies are often left in the street after gun assault, where stabbings occurred, where drug trafficking has occurred, where bullying occurs. So they teach their children the value of personal safety. And then they teach their children how to tactfully survive in the neighborhood when they're away from home. Sounds ridiculous, but it's true. Third, they monitor the number of violence, what they're exposed to on TV, as well as games and in the community. Fourth, they teach their children, regardless to your circumstances in life, always fight back. Last and most importantly, they realize that in this community where they meet their challenges, they also learn that they have to come into the community and find a way to be released from all of the burdens of the community, from the violence and to the negative feelings, so they are embraced by organizations like ourselves and others that take their children on benefit rides and into programs that help them. But right now, this young man that I'm talking about, the reason folks ask me, why would you want to come on the show and talk about this young man? And I'll tell you why. Most African American men, young men, are stereotyped as inattentive to their children, rather violent, not a good picture in the home, not even in the home. But I say to that, yes, historically, when you look at African American men, they have always been incarcerated at a higher rate above any other ethnic group in America. Yes, they're in prison, but those external factors are due to other elements. One being, black African American men die at a very early age due to violence, cancer, prostate cancer, self-inflicted inducement of drugs and alcohol. So that when you look at the families in the African American community, you will find that the male and female ratio is not the same. And you will also find that a lot of older mothers who have children by these African American men don't marry these black men simply because they die at an early age or they're in prison. So many times single mothers are left alone struggling, trying to find the resources for their family. But I find that this young man who came to our community struggling with his family, what I admired about him most is this. He said to me, have the world understand, we're not asking for a handout. He says, when people look at me with my dreads and with my tattoos, he says, don't judge me. The same way that Dr. King once said, don't judge me by the color of my skin, but by the content of my character. When I look at this young man, I'm proud to see him in his struggle. He holds dearly to his family. He works every day. He watches his children go to school in large number with other kids in the community, and they surround a circle of support as they walk through this vibrant community on their way to school. He picks them up from school and returns home with them. His first and disappointing challenge in a home that he doesn't complain because of a family that large, he makes do with what he has. But for 7 children in a 2-bedroom home that's bed bug infested. That's his biggest hurdle. He took me, I was invited to his home. He took me to the back of his house. And every 2 months, he purchases new mattresses for his children and his family to sleep in because the landlord refused to get rid of the bed bugs. And I said to him, I said, number one, you have to take these mattresses and you have to quarantine them, get them in plastic so that the neighbors don't haul them away, and the furniture that you have, cut it up and write that it's bed bug infested, because in Chicago, it's a big problem. When I was invited to his home, a modest home, when I walked in the door, there was one sofa. On that sofa were the 7 children. In the living room by the fireplace was just one large old-fashioned TV, 19-inch screen TV, where the entire family sits and watch their programming. I often wondered why they were reluctant to have me sit on the sofa, and that's when I discovered the bed bug issue. A shame, yes. Warning, it had to happen. Then we go and we talk about the family, and I go to the dining room table and I sit with the family, and when they pick the kids up from school and they bring them home and they sit around the dining room table, what impressed me most was they talked about personal safety. They talked about their school days. They talked about how difficult it was to be in school because there have been bullies. And in the neighborhood that they live in, a lot of the kids don't have the advantage of having a mom and dad in the home. So they live on their own, and they learn that bullying to some kids is an advance. To some kids, it's entertainment. And so the family sits around the tables and talks about ways to meet that challenge. And as I sat and talked with the family, we then talked to the children, and I asked them, what do you want to do for your family when you grow up? The smallest of the child said to me, I want to buy the biggest house to put my family in because I'm tired of these marks on my arm and on the arms of my brothers and sisters. So here today as my guest, I have Miss Cynthia Young, who has spent a lot of time as a case manager. And the thing that I've learned in meeting the challenges of family like hers and a family like him, and his family, is that education is important. And in any situation, before you can resolve the issue, you have to be educated on how to get the result that you need. Ms. Young has the experience of dealing with family as a case manager. Ms. Young, thank you so much for being a guest today.
You're welcome.
And I know you are vaguely familiar with this family. So can you tell me from your perspective some of the things that you have done in trying to help them meet their needs?
Right. Thank you for allowing me to be here, Mr. Scholler. This particular family has had their set of challenges, but the thing that I appreciate the most about them are some of the same things that you talked about. They have a strong desire to do better.
Yes.
They are morally on the high road. They're doing everything in their power to make it and to have a better life for their children. The husband had 3 kids of his own. The wife had 3 kids, and then they married. And then they had another child. So those factors being involved with trying to get them housing is a pretty huge barrier because of the family size. Mm-hmm. And he's been working on his job for a long time. He has a strong employment history, but there were some other challenges that were going on. So you're looking at a numerous amount of things that are going on in their particular household. But the thing that really frustrated me the most was, here's a family, they're trying their best to do right, they go to church, they do everything in their power, and yet they're still not able to get to that point in their lives where they can say, well, you know what, we've made it. We've, gotten the all-American dream. We're in our house with our picket fence, and it's completely frustrating. And the systems in place are designed for people who either have no money or very low income. And they're right at the cusp of some assistance, but they make too much money for other assistance. So it becomes a very, very frustrating process for trying to get them housing. Many landlords are reluctant to rent to families of that size. They need at least 4 bedrooms with a family of that size. And as I said, they're not trying to get handouts, or they're not trying to, work the system. They really want to do everything that they can to just get a piece of the American pie, to have that dream. But there are so many systems in place that makes it very difficult and very challenging for them.
And that is true. When I spoke with the mom, and because she's home most of the time, she's she's constantly in contact with different property owners, and she has said to me, we would give a person that owns a property a call, and we would like to go out to the property, and they get the invitation and they go out. But it's when they get out of their vehicle and the property owner sees 7 children coming out, all of a sudden he's reluctant to give them a chance. And so she said, I'm not comfortable with lying. She said, but sometimes I feel like I need to tell them I only have 3 children, but that defeats the point of what we're trying to do. When I asked them, how do you support your family? How are you intending to support your family? They told me what their income was. Here's the other challenge. When they go and try to get legal services or financial services, just as you said, it seemed like the deck is stacked against the poor. Now, don't get me wrong. There are institutions, organizations out there willing to help, but they're like in a cusp. If they qualify in one sense, being a large family, that's fine. But in the other sense, where he makes too much money for what they want to afford, then he's not able to get the housing. So it's almost like they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. But that doesn't discourage them.
Right.
What we're here today to do, because we're looking in the audience, there are those of you that this situation, I am pretty sure, happens to a lot of families in the city of Chicago. But I know this. In the city of Chicago, there are many resources.
Right.
There are those that have property. There is someone, I believe, that's out there that's willing to give this family a chance to live into one of their structures, to be able to support their children, have the comfort they need, and watch this family grow. Oftentimes, black men who are unemployed leave their family behind because they feel like the mother can qualify for state aid without the father being in the home. So sometimes that's the reason, that's the only way they can get the support they need to house their family. He's reluctant to do that.
Absolutely.
Because he loves his children. And they do believe that they can make it. Now, I've spoken with, there was an attorney I met out of the Cabrini Green Association, Mrs. Cynthia Cornelius. Very lovely person,
Yes,
very
she
good
is.
and effective
Yes,
attorney.
she is.
And I had the privilege of talking with her. And she has a very effective program for those in low-income housing. But like with different nonprofits, her services apply to those with records and convictions. So even though this young man, he's never been to prison,
Right.
and I'm proud of that fact. You know, he's never been to prison.
Right.
Because he doesn't fit that guideline, he's not entitled to that service.
Right.
So we continue to try to find, and we will find those services.
Right.
But right now, we're trying to appeal to the audience,
Absolutely.
to someone that's willing and able to trust them, because as I first mentioned at the beginning of this broadcast, bed bugs is a very serious issue. You know, when I walked through the home of this family, in addition to the bed bug situation, here's a landlord, and it's embarrassing to say, and I'm glad that I won't mention the name of the family. I go into their bathroom, and if you sit directly on the toilet and you look up, if they happen to be on the second floor and they're flushing the toilet, the ceiling is exposed, and all the debris and water comes down on the very person that's sitting on the stool.
Yes.
When they try to address that with the landlord, because the landlord is a dear friend, and because the income is so low,
Right.
the landlord is reluctant to do anything. So they're trapped in a situation where they want to do better, so two things is going on here. They almost stay there because they can afford the rent, but the discomfort, no repairs. So then I go to the kitchen, and I look, and you smell the lime and the mold that's coming from under the sink and in the bathroom and in the kitchen.
Right.
And the children are repeatedly being sick by this. And I asked them, what have you done? They've spoken to the landlord several times, and they're still reluctant to do anything. And so we've got together, and we're finding ways to combat that and repair that. But the short-term solutions is not going to help this family.
Correct.
Because the landlord has to be on top of that, and he has to provide the services.
Correct.
Now, I understand that you also tried to find housing for them, and what was one of the biggest challenges when you took them into an area? There was a beautiful area,
Right.
the home was beautiful, the location was great, but what was the drawback to that for them as a family?
The drawback to that as a family was the qualification and some of the guidelines in place for that particular family. But I'm glad you mentioned about the hazardous conditions that they're living in, because that's another thing that they're trying to avoid. And this is a situation that I find often in cases like this, when families of a large size, such as theirs, are trying to find affordable housing. It's virtually impossible, especially in a safe neighborhood. And that's something that really needs to be addressed, and hopefully there is someone in the audience that can help this particular family to have the dream, as I mentioned before, and to have the things that you need just to be able to function normally in a society with 7 children, and to live happy, safe. Those are basic, instincts for living, and to have adequate shelter. To have those things. These are beautiful kids. This is a beautiful family. These aren't unruly children. They're very mannerable. They're very, orderly, and they're very obedient to their parents. So to have this type of family, and to have the needs that they have, it just breaks my heart when I, try to do things and try to take them places and be a part of the solution for them, and then it still doesn't work out. So that's it's incredibly frustrating, as I said before. But they do have those barriers with the guidelines with FHA and the loan processes to get more affordable housing to purchase.
Thank you so much. Bishop, you have been working around the city of Chicago for a very long time. In North Lawndale, you're part of the board that deal with housing and units. And give me an understanding of what has been your understanding of how these issues get resolved, or what are some of the resources that you would consider that they use, or what have you used in the past for such a situation as this?
Well, thanks for having me, Mitch, again.
Thank you, sir.
And this is a very difficult situation, but as I listen to you talk about the difficulty, and Cynthia talk about the challenges and the obstacles, what I do see is hope.
Yes.
Yes.
And I just want to talk a little bit about the family. I never met them, but based on what you've said about them, they sound like a model family. And sometimes, when you go on certain applications on the computer, sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it's complex, but you find some that are user-friendly. Mm-hmm. So what we need to look for is a landlord or someone who has property that will be what I call user-friendly, to be able to look at this family and take them on the merits of what they bring to the table. They don't bring the stereotypes that we talk about. Mm-hmm. And the good thing I like about what is being done with this family is that, this young man seemed to be focused. Mm-hmm. He seemed to be dedicated. He seemed to have the ambition. He's, I like the coin a phrase that he's down but not up.
Right. Like
and if he fall down, he get up because he can look up
Absolutely.
and get up.
Absolutely.
And when we talk about this today, in our ministries, that's what we do.
Yes.
In City Harvest and my ministry, Marketplace Ministries, and we do anti-violence. But when we gather people together, we talk about how we should work together to come up with solutions and remedies to help people overcome obstacles. Right. And this is one of those situations where it's purely as an obstacle, but I just feel in my heart that by us talking about this today
Yes.
on the airs, that there's going to be some solution come forth. I want to share with you a quick story of a young lady I met when I was in California at a conference. And we were talking about similar situation with violence in the community and poverty and no job creation and things like that. And she was a nurse. She worked for a major hospital chain. And she ran into many, many obstacles in trying to do what she wanted to do to help people. And so she was so frustrated, she quit her job as a nurse and formed her own nonprofit. And in her nonprofit, what she wanted to do was the very thing that she couldn't do in the big system. And she went on a talk show. It wasn't a television show where they could see you. It was on a radio talk show. And she talked about the plight of what she needed to do to help people and do things. And while on the air, a caller called in. Yeah. And he pledged several $1 million
That was very good.
for her project.
Wow.
And I'm happy to say that that project now is helping young boys. She's now traveling all around the country setting up models. She came to Chicago. She's in California. I actually met with her when she was in Chicago. We toured some areas in Chicago, set up a chapter here, and is doing some great programs for people in the city. Now let's back up and talk about North Lawndale. North Lawndale is a community that is really reaching out to help people. Started in the 60s, right after the riots. And they have done a phenomenal job in a number of areas. Our most recent piece is we got a legal center. We have a fitness center. And we have started a housing project, which we call the King Village. Matter of fact, it's on the same spot that Martin Luther King lived on when he was here in Chicago in the 60s. And it's 45 units, and they're condos and townhouses. And unfortunately, it's fully occupied for this case with welfare mothers and seniors. But they go out of their way to be user-friendly, to make sure that they accommodate families of large proportion. And I speak about North Lawndale. We also do collaboration with other people, just like we do in our ministry. We collaborate with City Harvest and with Marketplace Ministries, and also with another friend of ours, Tudor Mentoring, which is Dan Basil.
Yes,
I got to throw Dan in there as well, in terms of how we collaborate and do things. And so I think by our collaboration and the things that we do, and people know what we do, and we're putting the word out, that we'll have somebody coming to the forefront to reach out to help us with this problem.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I believe that I said before that he has 3 challenges.
Right.
The housing challenge is not the greatest one, but it's the most significant one for now. But as you said, struggling is not something that for generations we are not unfamiliar with. We manage our struggles.
Absolutely.
You know, our history bears that out. He has, in addition to the housing, in addition to the violent community, his greatest challenge is one that I admire him for this as well. He has 3 children who he has fathered from the same mom who's not responsible. He took them from her. And like most relationships, it doesn't always end on a good note.
That's true.
So when you try to ask them to support you legally in terms of walk with me, let's do it right, let's go down to the friends of the court, let me sign off on parentage so that I'll be able to, right now, his difficult challenge because he's not the legal custody of his children.
Right.
When it comes down to having medical insurance by his employer, because he can't legally say, even though these are his children, because it's the same with the marriage.
Right.
If you, in a marriage, there's a husband,
Right.
there's a wife,
Right.
but there's also the state.
Right.
The state is involved.
Right.
In this situation, there's just a young man and a young woman that had 3 children, and there's no legal grounds for him.
Right.
So we've talked to attorneys, and they're trying to represent him now. And I say to you, the audience, and to him as well, educate yourself. What I see about him, he wants the legal custody because he can't get the medicine that he needs when his son is sick,
Right.
because they won't cover his child on the insurance.
Right.
Is he disappointed? Yes.
Right.
Does he still go to work every day? Yes.
Right.
He still reaches out. Just the other day before this broadcast, when I talked to his wife about this situation for their medical insurance, I asked him who did they reach out to. And they reached out to a firm that said, yes, we will manage all of that for you, but at a fee of $2,000. So I said to them, what was the $2,000 for? It's just to file a petition, to ask for custody, to have a hearing, to get the custody that they need. Well, I said to him, you can do that on your own. There are online services where you can learn to do all of these things yourself.
Right.
And that's what he's in the process of doing now.
Right. Right.
And let me just say this to you, again, what I admire about this young man is that most fathers, when a father has a child, whether it's an individual or organization that want to know more about the father and the child, they look at their age.
Right.
Now, the African-American man, the first thing they do is look at the relationship between the father and the child. Whether there's a domestic dispute or whether there's community violence, they want to know what the relationship is.
Exactly.
For him, it's a good one. In addition to looking at his age, a lot of people look at his employment status. Can he afford to do what he do? Can he pay for medical insurance? Yes, he can. Can he pay for housing? Affordable housing? Yes, he can. Then they look, if that's not enough, they can't decide, then they ask the question, how much education have you had? Because his level of education, his level of attainment says to them, you know, on what level he's if he's responsible or not. And then finally, they look at what residence he's staying in. Is he staying in the projects? Is he staying with a friend? Or is he staying in the house of the child's mom? And they try to see, for most of our African-American men, they always want to make them seem as if they're not responsible.
Right.
But again, I like the fact that he answered all of these with a positive yes, a very positive yes.
Right.
So I guess to say, at the most part, is that even though he's meeting his challenges right now in the community, even though violence is rampant, and his situation, let me just say this to you, his situation It's not uncommon. In the black African American community, violence is a common thing.
Absolutely.
Every day of every week, of every month, of every year, we see violence on some level.
Absolutely.
Our children are not immune to violence.
Right.
He has 2 7-year-olds. He has 2 10-year-olds, the boys. And then the daughter, I believe, is 11, and the youngest one is 9, and the baby girl is 1. And when I sat and talked to these kids, the gunshots, they hear them every day. But they're not moved by it because they've been taught how to resolve that. When they walk to school and they're approached by gang members, when they're bullied in the school, they're not moved by that. When I ask the child or all the children together what really bothers them, and because they know the family business, because they discuss the family problems, this is what they say: we don't want to be separated
Absolutely.
from each
not.
other.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, see,
not.
that family, you know, to interrupt you, Mitch, to talk about what you don't find in families like that.
Yes.
Most times you find dysfunctional
Yes.
in the families. But listen to you talk, I hear unity,
Yes.
I hear
Yeah.
harmony,
Yes.
I hear togetherness,
Yes.
I hear want to be an inclusive,
Yes.
I hear unselfishness.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and just this mere conversation is a good testament for the different people out there that can come to the table and provide the help.
Right.
I like to throw out the word linking resources. 'Cause
Yes.
That's what we're all about, is linking resources and pulling people together to help when somebody's in dire need. And so you talked about the legal challenges they have. There's a lot of organizations
Pro
out
bono.
there that will come to the table to do the very same thing that he wanted on a pro bono basis.
Correct.
So I'm hoping that they are listening to us today and they can come forth. And that's some things that you and I can talk about off the air, which I can't talk about on the air, that probably can put some support his way. In addition to the legal aspect of it, there's also some other services out there that can talk about how they can fortify that family, bring that family back together, and also get them out of the dire straits of the housing issue as well. There's no question about that can be done. And we actually are becoming champions for this cause. And like you said, it's not only his family,
Absolutely.
but families like him.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure there are others like him out
Yes.
there across the city of Chicago.
Yes.
And we want to speak to that issue for him, but also for all those others who don't have the kind of support he's getting. But we're talking for everybody that find themselves in that plight.
Right.
And that somebody will step up to the table and really, like I say, come forth and to show themselves user-friendly to make sure we have remedies and solutions to curtail this problem.
And if I can interject something at this point, you hit on it, and you were talking about the stigmas, and it's worthy to note that this particular family, and as you were just saying, Reverend Braxton, a lot of African American males don't fit the stigma that's out there on
Right.
them. You know, they're not out,
Right.
you know, doing drugs, and they're not, you know, gang banging, and they're not, you know, absent fathers.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of African Americans.
Yes.
This was a special that I saw on TV not long ago. The question was asked: are there more African American men in jail or in colleges or universities and training? And overwhelmingly, people answered there are more African American men in jail.
Absolutely.
That's erroneous information.
Absolutely.
But that's a part of the stigma that's out there.
Right.
There are more African American men enrolled in colleges, universities, and training than there are in prison. So if we can do something to eliminate or minimize most of these stigmas that are attached to our men and to our race as a whole, I think that's another huge thing that will help to overcome all of the
Right.
the
And to
factors
your
involved.
point, Cynthia, as we know, mainstream media don't like to tell touchy-feely stories. They don't like to tell stories
Right.
that are helpful and
Right.
people working together harmoniously and being productive. They like to tell the other side. But we need to
Sad but
do
true.
more shows like this,
Sad but true.
Mitch. And maybe we need to lobby more to get more shows like this to talk about the kind of problems and issues that are happening that is good. People find themselves in dire straits by no fault of their own.
Absolutely.
But they just need a little
Right.
help,
Yes.
Right.
a little push,
Yes.
and talk about how that, and then talk about the outcome of that and how it turned out in a positive way. I mean, they already have positive things going on with that family, and that's a wonderful thing.
Right.
And so I'm sure there are others like that as well.
And that's true, Bishop. When we look in our community, we service and meet a lot of families and a lot of individuals.
Right.
And the storyline runs the same.
Yes.
But every now and then, you meet a family like this one you don't, we don't have the resources.
Right.
Otherwise, we would not have this conversation.
Right.
We would be doing what we do best,
Yes.
is serve the people that we care about. But there are other families out there, as you said, who carry the same storyline.
Right.
But the uniqueness of this family is that they are relentless.
Right.
They struggle through this challenge every day. And they're not above anyone else. But we draw attention because despair happens. Here's a young man who's positive in every sense. He's broken every stereotypical mold of a black man that's presented in the media. And he's dogma about trying to do the best for his family. And before he breaks, many of our young men break
Yes.
and they give up.
Yes.
And so I've talked to some of those young men who started out by doing the right things, but the help didn't come fast enough.
Right.
So for a lot of young boys, they turn around and do the wrong things
Absolutely.
and let the cards fall where they may.
Yes.
But we're hoping you, as a viewer,
Absolutely.
would understand, even with such a short notice, that here's a family that needs your help. As we said at the beginning of this broadcast, they will get the the help they need. The housing situation, there are tenant attorneys, tenant council meetings, attorneys out there to help them with their housing problem in terms of infestation and bed bugs and the whole 9 yards. But where we need your help, we need your referrals, we need your references, we need your opportunities. Please
Yes.
take a moment, call the numbers on the screen, and suggest, even imply, or open up a door. I leave this with you before we leave. Out of all the greatest commandments they asked Jesus, he said, which one is the greatest? And they said, the first one is love God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. And the second commandment, greatest to that, is love your neighbor as yourself. It has been a pleasure having you as an artist and listening to us as we breach this concern. Thank you for watching. Thank you so much for caring. God bless. Until we meet again. Thank you so much.